considered by the Local Government and Environment Committee. Those of that opinion will please say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I therefore call on Members' Order of the Day number 3.
Criminal Proceeds Recovery Act 2009 Application to Casinos Amendment Bill, first reading.
I call the Honourable Member Materia Ture. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tēnā koutou katoa te whare. I move that the Criminal Proceeds Recovery Act 2009 Application to Casinos Amendment Bill be now read for a first time, and I nominate the Commerce Select Committee to consider this bill in time.
Good.
Put simply, Mr Speaker, this bill makes casinos subject to the Criminal Proceeds Recovery Act 2009. That Act established a civil forfeiture regime where a person who is in receipt of any profits derived from any crime. Now, that person need not be responsible for, a party to, nor convicted of that or any other crime to be subject to the forfeiture regime. That is, it applies regardless of the person's guilt. Blame is not an issue under the Criminal Proceeds Recovery Act, only whether or not a person has received goods that were acquired through a significant criminal activity. Now, this applies to all legal persons or all ordinary persons, humans in this country, ordinary New Zealanders, but casinos are not required under any legislation to return either to the state or to the victim of a crime any profits that they make from the gambling of stolen funds. So casinos are not subject to this law as ordinary New Zealanders are. Sometimes those kinds of crimes in casinos are very high profile. They involve millions and millions of dollars, often it's money laundering. Most often, though, the gambled money has been stolen from small businesses, from medium-sized New Zealand businesses, from community organisations, from friends and from family. These businesses, organisations and individuals suffer serious financial impacts, bankruptcy often, while the casinos get to keep the profits from the gambling of that stolen money. My bill will see an end to the keeping of that stolen money. We know that gambling causes harm. Since the horse bolted and casinos were allowed to be established in the 1990s, Parliament has been grappling with all the different ways to stop them from causing more harm. In 2003, MPs passed the Gambling Act. The view then was that gambling was a profoundly bad thing, especially for the most vulnerable people, and that casinos were seen as an industry which needed stringent laws to control, regulate and contain to stop them from causing more harm to people. The Gambling Act put a lid on the industry, preventing more casinos from opening and banning any mechanism that allowed existing casinos to offer more opportunities to gamble. However, we know from recent wheeling and dealing that the intentions of this Act have been deliberately subverted. My bill was developed in response to the dirty deal that the Prime Minister, John Key, and Minister Stephen Joyce are doing to secure the Sky City John Key Casino Convention Centre in Auckland. Now, Sky City has done everything it can, the John Key Memorial Convention Centre, that's right. Sky City has done everything it can to get around the Gambling Act in order to expand its operations. It has taken case after case to the courts, relentlessly pursued the Gambling Commission in an effort to squeeze more opportunities to evade the Act. When legal avenues didn't work, Sky City bosses wined and dined MPs and their staff, lobbying government relentlessly, made donations to politicians and to political parties, and eventually it appears that has paid off. John Key knew that the Ministry for Economic Development was investigating the feasibility of a convention centre in Auckland. So he offered Sky City a deal. He allowed them up to a third more, he would allow them up to a third more pokie machines and other harmful gambling concessions if they built the convention centre in Auckland. Now, this would involve changing the Gambling Act, but of course he's the Prime Minister, and in the infamous words of a previous National Party Prime Minister, he would have said to himself, I'm sure, there is a little room downstairs in which we fix problems like that. John Key has argued that he made the deal with SkyCity because it is a good one, because it won't cost the New Zealand public to build the convention centre. But of course he's wrong. Gambling-related harm costs the New Zealand public millions of dollars a year in bankruptcies, arrests, incarcerations, unemployment, divorce, poor physical and mental health, loss of educational opportunity and suicide. No benefit. Increases in gambling equals increases in costs. And my bill will help to create accountability for and reduce some of those costs. John Key also argued that the convention centre would create a heap of jobs, but he was wrong about that too, and he so massively inflated the job numbers that the author of the feasibility report came out in the media to correct him. He inflated the numbers by almost double. John Key inflated the job numbers by almost double, misleading the public and, in my view, misleading this Parliament. Making up job numbers to sell the casino convention centre deal to the public is extremely desperate. So is standing up in Parliament waving a study that actually shows pokie machines are more likely to cause problem gambling than the community-based ones, but telling MPs that it's reversed. John Key did that as well. This is blatant hypocrisy. It's followed hard on the heels of SkyCity CEO Nigel Morrison trying to argue that Lotto was much worse than casinos, again in an attempt to distort the figures in order to sell this dirty deal to New Zealanders. The deal was so questionable that the Auditor-General agreed to investigate it. That investigation is ongoing. Both the process for seeking and assessing proposals on the deal, the adequacy of the assessment of the likely costs and benefits, and any other matters that they think are necessary. My bill, what's been missing in the discussions around this deal is that the change in law subverts the fundamental intent of the Gambling Act. My bill will help bring some integrity back to this legislation. This bill amends the definition of the principal act of the term unlawfully benefited from significant criminal activity, and will specifically refer to casinos that knowingly, having regard to best international practice in detecting problem gambling and criminal activity, derive a benefit from significant criminal activity. So we know that casinos attract significant criminal activity. The Financial Transactions Reporting Act 1996 and the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering Financing of Terrorism Act of 2009 describe casinos as specific typologies of risk of crime. More provisions of the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering Financing of Terrorism Act 2009 come into force in 2013, and those provisions place enhanced obligations on casinos to monitor and report suspicious activity. But they do not require the casinos to return to those from whom the money was stolen the profits that they make from illegal activity and the gambling of stolen funds. And there is no justification why ordinary New Zealanders should be required to forfeit the profits from criminal activity, but casinos, who are internationally recognised as drivers of crime and the receivers of that stolen property, should not also be subject to the law. It is just about making them subject to the same law that everybody else is, and finding a way to help restore just a tiny bit of the loss that New Zealanders suffer. New Zealand businesses, community organisations, charities, when we know that so much of the money that is stolen from charities is gambled in casinos, from family and from friends. This is not just about the SkyCity dirty deal. This is about making sure that casinos have a stronger level of regulation and pay back to those families, to those New Zealanders who pay the cost of the operations. It is a fair bill. It places a reasonable obligation on casinos, and it helps to reduce the harm that is caused by gambling and gambling addiction. I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call